In this video, you're gonna see me design, test, and craft one of the most iconic video game items of all time. That's right, today we're making a working Create Mod wrench. So jumping right in, the first step of any project is figuring out the scope. Now, the in-game wrench is used to turn and pick up 1 meter cubes in an instant, and that's not really something I think we're gonna be able to do in real life. So I think our best alternative is gonna be to get the jaws to open and close, mimicking a version of a real-life monkey wrench. Now, looking at the structure of the wrench, we can split it into a few parts. First, we have the handle and the connector bits and the top jaw. Now, these parts are all going to be static in the final design, so we don't need to put too much consideration into how we're going to make them. They're just going to snap together in the final design. Now, unlike this 1:1 scale model that I made in a separate video, the cog in-game spins constantly as you use the wrench. So in our new version, we're definitely going to make the cog spin. The next part is the screw bit of the wrench. Now, once completed, this is going to be similar to a lead screw on a 3D printer and essentially ride up and down inside the cog to move the bottom jaw. And then the last component is that bottom jaw, which will be locked in place to the screw in order to open and close. Now for this wrench, I'm not going full scale again. While it was really fun to make a giant wrench, I don't have the space for another one, and who needs two giant Create Mod wrenches in their house? So for this version, I think we're going to do half scale. And I already know that I'll be happy with the size, as I had the opportunity to create one of these wrenches for my friend Ubersui at half scale, and just in the hand, like the half scale wrench feels really good. Now, as I already have the wrench modeled up in CAD, I can use it as an outline for all the technical components that are going to go into making the working wrench. Now, I actually messed up my original model. So when I made the model, I centered the cog on this bottom connector piece. And if you look at the real model, the cog actually should be centered on the screw bit. Now, I don't really know how I managed to mess this up, but we're going to run with it. It still looks good in my opinion. So we're going to have our gear offset, which means we're going to have to do something a little bit more complex to get the screw to turn because we can't drive it directly off of the cog. To achieve this, I think our best route, and certainly the coolest, is going to be to go with a planetary gear set. The way I'm using the gear set is by turning the outer ring gear, which will essentially be the cog, then using that movement to spin the planet gears, which one of them is going to have a screw threaded into it, which is going to be our screw that's going to move up and down. So this means that as long as I can keep the screw from turning while spinning the outer cog, I will be able to drive the screw up and down, opening and closing our jaw. So with all the mechanics figured out about how to actually get this to work, it's time to start modeling it out in CAD. For this part, I used SolidWorks to create a full 3D model of the wrench, basically stripped right from the game. Then I went ahead and designed the planetary gear set. Now once that was designed, the size of the planet gear directly impacted the maximum size we could go with the screw because I still wanted it to be centered in location as it is on the original model. So that allowed me to draw up the screw, and then the last part was just to design all the other pieces and all the connection points so that way it all is going to fit together at the end. Now that I had the design together, I figured it would be worth my time to 3D print a prototype version of the wrench before full sending it, just to make sure that everything lines up and works as intended. So I sliced up all the parts, and after a little bit of printing, I was able to test out the wrench. And this just goes to show prototyping is almost always worth it. Because I made this test print, it allowed me to see that some of my connectors were off, so I was able to adjust ones that were too small or too large. This one was clearly too small. Plus, I was also able to test the opening and closing function of the wrench. And luckily, that mechanism worked great first time. The only thing I really want to adjust is something to hold the bottom jaw in place, because currently, as you're tightening the wrench, if it's something on the very end, you can see it'll actually kind of start to bend out, which isn't ideal. So after adjusting my connection points and adding a slot for the bottom jaw to ride in, I felt that the mechanics of the wrench were finally complete. However, I also wanted to consider the aesthetics. So as I was modeling it, the screw being small and looking real really made it stick out, and in quite a bad way. So on the prototype, I tested out beveling the top jaw and adding teeth to it in an attempt to lean into the realism and make the wrench look even more real. And I quite liked this, but I didn't love it. So I figured I'd reach out to a real artist and get an opinion on it. And what better person to talk to than the guy who actually made the original Create Mod wrench model, Crippers. And after showing him what I had, he basically said that the screw and the teeth are really out of scale with the original design, and that's kind of what makes him look kind of uncanny and weird. And he kind of recommended that if I wanted a good final looking product, I should take our design and make it more stylized. He even took the time to draw a mock-up of what I could do to make the design feel more cohesive. And using this mock-up as a reference, I was able to adjust my model and add in some details that I think really take it from, you know, a cool project to like a really cool project. And I'm really happy with this final design and all the little details that I added. So with the design fully completed for a wrench, the last step is to send it over to the printers and hit go. And I want to give a huge thank you to Bambu Labs for actually sending over this A1 for me to print this project. This printer has been fantastic. It not only has great print quality right off the bat with easy to use settings, but it actually has an AMS built in, which means we can automatically change materials. Now for this project, I'm not messing around with different colors. Everything is just printed as a color and then snapped together. And the main purpose for that design is that way you can take it and print it on any printer you want. But I actually got really good use out of this function. And that's because my main material I used was PLA because it's available in a ton of different colors. But I could use PETG as a support layer in between the support that holds up the parts and the actual parts themselves. So that way, when I actually went to remove them, the supports just fell right off. I didn't have to spend any time cleaning up these parts afterwards. And yeah, I can very comfortably recommend this printer for anybody who's interested in getting into 3D printing. It's not the fanciest machine on the market. It can't print every material available, but it'll do what you need, especially if you're just building cool props like this. So finally, after tweaking the models a bit to make them more print friendly and slicing them up in the software to send to the printer, I had all my parts ready to be put together. And the assembly process honestly went off pretty much without a hitch. All I did was glue all of the static components together and assemble the little gearbox, which was extremely satisfying. Now I'm left with a finished working Create Mod wrench. And I just gotta say, this thing turned out so cool. I absolutely love it. It not only feels like it's the perfect size for this prop, but like the opening and closing action works so smooth, and the turning of the cog actuating the little jaw is really cool, and like it feels meant to be, if that makes sense. I'm so happy that I actually took the time to make the Create Mod wrench work. It was cool as a static prop, but it's so much cooler as a functioning little item. And if you want to try to print this yourselves, all the files are available down in the description below, along with links to all the different colors that I use to make the wrench. I definitely want to take on another Create Mod item at this point, so definitely leave a comment down below of what you'd like to see brought into the real life from the Create Mod, and if I like it enough, maybe I'll make that next. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video of me making a working Create Mod wrench. I had a ton of fun putting together this project, and I'm definitely looking forward to what's next for my channel because I'm still trying to figure that out right now. So stay tuned, more content to come, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.